the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy. The Hebrew title of the book is Devarim, which means what? Words. Words. We're going to talk about that. So we're going to do an introduction to the whole book, and then we're going to look into the details of the portion. So we got a lot to do today. The title Deuteronomy comes from two Greek words. Deutero, which means second, and nomos, which means Torah. So this book is called the second law. The second giving of the law. We see that there's a lot of repetition of the Torah in this book. Now this name, Deuteronomy, comes from the Septuagint. The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Torah done by the Jewish people. Don't ever think that the Septuagint is a Christian translation. The Septuagint was done 200 plus years before Yeshua. This is a thoroughly Jewish translation. And it helps because it was done in the Greek. And so we can see the connection between the Berith Hadashah, the New Testament, in Greek, and the Torah, and the whole Tanakh. So it's very helpful. So the name Deuteronomy comes from this verse, Deuteronomy 17:18, which says, "Now it shall come about when he sits," this is speaking of the future king, "when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write for himself a copy of this law." So here's the phrase, copy of this law. Copy of this law in Hebrew is Mishneh. I have it here on the screen. Mishneh Torah. Mishneh Torah. The copy of the law. In Greek, it was translated as Deuteronomion. So you can see the name. So the name for the book is taken from this verse. So he shall copy a copy of this Torah on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priests. So that's where the name comes from. Now, the book of Deuteronomy is commonly understood as the repetition of the law, the repetition of the Torah. The word Mishneh sounds close to Mishnah, right? The Mishnah is the repetition because this is how you memorize it, repeating it to yourself. So this is how you memorize the oral Torah, the oral law, right? You're memorizing it, so you repeat it. So that's where the relationship between those two words. And so the book is considered a repetition of the Torah. But is it really a repetition of the Torah? Is it really? Well, let me help us guide us into reviewing the book here. Because you see, how much of Genesis is repeated in Deuteronomy? Do we have creation? Do we have Adam and Eve? Cain and Abel? Noah? Do we have Abraham? Do we have the Tower of Babel? Do we have Isaac, Jacob, Joseph? We have none of it. What about Exodus? How much of Exodus do we have in Deuteronomy? Well, we have Sinai and the Ten Commandments. We have that in Deuteronomy. We have some references to the Exodus, but we don't have the birth of Moses, the slavery in Egypt, maybe some reference to it in passing. But we don't have an exposition, a repetition of those stories from the Torah. We don't have the mention of the building of the tabernacle or the presence of God coming into the tabernacle. We don't have any of that. So is it really a repetition of Exodus? Probably not. How about Leviticus? How much of Leviticus do we find in Deuteronomy? Well, there are a few stories in Leviticus, like the death of Nadab and Abihu, who died in the temple in the tabernacle when they brought in strange fire. We don't have any of that. We don't have the loss of the sacrifices. We don't have the repetition of the loss of the sacrifices that we find in Leviticus. We really don't have a whole lot of Leviticus in Deuteronomy. We have a few stories from the book of Numbers, though. Right in our portion today, in the first parasha, we have the naming or the institution of the leadership, the elders and the leaders of thousands and hundreds and fifties and all of that. We do have that. We have the spies, the story of the spies. We have that. We also have the refusal of Israel to enter into the land. By the way, from Exodus, we do have the golden calf. And we have from Numbers, we have the story of the defeat of the two kings, Og and Sihon. Those are important, and we have them in our portion today. But see, there are a lot of stories even from the book of Numbers that are not in Deuteronomy. The loss of Numbers and the stories, the narrative of the book of Numbers. So how much of a repetition of the Torah is this? Well, it is easy to see that Deuteronomy is not really a summary of the Torah. That's easy to see. But what is it then? We know what it is not, but what is it then? What is Deuteronomy? Well, the key is in the first word, in the title of it, in Hebrew. These are the words. These are the Devarim. We have it here, Deuteronomy 1:1. These are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel. So in Hebrew, we have Ele HaDevarim. Ele HaDevarim. These are the words. Now the word Devarim, as we said, means words. But all the other books of the Torah are also about words. So how is this different? How is Deuteronomy different? How is it about words? What does that mean? Well, one major difference between Deuteronomy and the other books of the Torah is that Genesis contains a lot of narrative, right? A lot of stories. Exodus also contains a lot of stories and laws. Leviticus is mostly laws, very few narrative. Numbers is a combination of the two. We have a lot of laws in Numbers and also a lot of narrative, a lot of stories. Deuteronomy alone has the majority of speeches. The book of Deuteronomy is a compilation of speeches given by Moses. You see, we don't have that in the other books of the Torah. Now, even the stories that we have in Deuteronomy, the stories of the spies, for instance, and the golden calf, or even the giving of the Torah at Sinai, the stories in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, are actually contained inside the speeches of Moses. That's interesting. That's different. Now, because of the prominence of the speeches in Devarim, we need to, it is a good study to go in and find out how many of these speeches are, where do they start, where do they have a break, how can we study this book? Well, one good thing that we can do, and we have it here on the screen, is look for when the speeches actually start. When it changes from narrative, third person, to first person. Look at this. These are the words which Moses spoke. So these are the words which he, Moses, this is third person. This is narrative. That Moses spoke to all of Israel across the Jordan in the wilderness. Jump to verse 4. It says, after he, still narrative, third person, after he defeated Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth and Edrei, across the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moses undertook to expound this law, this Torah, saying, and here begins the speech. Verse 6. Watch this. The Lord our God spoke to us at Horeb, which is Sinai. Our God spoke to us. That is first person plural. Now we find that in other books of the Torah. But get this. This speech goes from chapter 1 all the way to chapter 4. We don't have that in the rest of the Torah. For 3 solid chapters, actually 4 solid chapters, a whole speech in first person. Us, I, we, and then you, as he's speaking directly to them. This is a big characteristic of the book of Deuteronomy. So we could say this, that the phrase at the beginning, these are the Devarim, these are the words. You know how we can translate this? We can understand them better if we say, these are the speeches. This book are the speeches that Moses spoke to all of Israel across the Jordan in the wilderness. We have about 6 of these main speeches in the book of Deuteronomy. Now, let me give you a little bit of a working outline for this book, for the entire book. The first one, which we just mentioned, the first speech, we first have an introduction, verses 1 through 5, third person narrative. Then we go into the first speech, which is chapter 1 all the way to the end of chapter 4. At the end of chapter 4, then we have a little break in the narrative, a couple of verses, and then it begins back again with the main speech. Now, look at the main speech. The main speech goes for how many chapters? 22. 22 chapters of a speech. First person, I, we, us, you, Allah. So the main speech is key in the book. Then look at the center. You see how I make this outline for you? It's not just an outline, but it is going in concentric form. This is a menorah shape. If you were to flip it, you will see a menorah, or we could put the middle right up, and you will see how it's all focusing on the center of it. So at the center of it is the covenant speech, the covenant. And we're going to obviously go into these details, so we don't need to teach this right now. Then we have a prophetic speech, an exhortation speech, and then Moses' blessing and death and the commissioning of Joshua. This is how we can organize the speeches in Deuteronomy. Now let me make 2 observations from this outline. Number 1 is that the message of the main speech, 22 chapters, has to be central to this book. It has to be. We know. We get a feeling that that's where the meat of it is, right? But at the very center, which we see in this outline form, at the very center is this covenant. So there are 2 things that are the main themes of Deuteronomy. Whatever the main speech is talking about, and this covenant. So we're going to try to marry those 2 today so we can understand. Now normally, obviously, I would show you what the message of the main speech is. I will take you and we will look at the details and then come up with a definition of what the main speech is talking about. But we don't have time. We will do it as we get to those chapters, beginning next week, because our next portion begins in chapter 3, at the end of chapter 3. So we will begin analyzing the first or the main speech next week. All right? But we can have ourselves a working definition of what this book is about, so that we can work off of that. I want to show you first Deuteronomy 5, verse 1. Look at this. Look at this verse. This is already in the main speech. Right? So we're in this territory that we're going to cover next week in detail. But I want to show you something here. Look, it says, Deuteronomy 5:1, it says, Then Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the ordinances which I am speaking today in your hearing, that you may learn them and observe them carefully. So watch this. Hear, O Israel, this is at the beginning of the first speech, of the main speech, I'm sorry. Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the ordinances. The statutes and the ordinances, which I am speaking to you today. See, the book of Deuteronomy is an exposition of the statutes and the ordinances. Most of you were here for a couple of months ago now. You can catch up with our teachings on our website. We taught about the ordinances and the statutes. We know these are the chukim. Chukim are the statutes, and the ordinances are the mishpatim in Hebrew. The chukim are the commandments that teach us about proper worship. How to worship God, not according to the customs. This is another translation of the word chukim, or statutes here, customs. We're not to worship God according to the customs of the nations. This is big in the Torah. God is constantly reminding and commanding Israel, do not worship me according to the customs of the nations. But he gives them his chukim, his customs, the feasts, the Shabbat, the sacrifices. Big portion of the Torah is about worship, how to worship God in the proper way. This main speech is about that. It's about the chukim, how to worship God properly, how not to worship God according to the nations. The other part is the ordinances, the mishpatim. The word mishpatim means judgments. So these are the judicial decisions that the leaders in Israel, the judges, make. And we know one famous one, Solomon. They brought the child to Solomon. He got the sword, and he was going to cut it because he was really trying to get at who is the person between these two, who is the real one that is suffering oppression, who is the one that is being treated unjustly. His job as a judge, as a king and judge, was to restore what this person being oppressed was suffering, was losing. That is the function of the judges. That's the function of judgments. It's making compassionate decisions to deliver those who are in oppression. Again, you can go to our website and you will find these teachings that we've done on these. So, the book of Deuteronomy is an exposition of the chukim and the mishpatim, of the statutes and the ordinances, of the proper way to worship and how to live with compassion for other people, how to love God and love people. You see where this is getting at? This is Yeshua's summary of the Torah. This is Paul's summary of the Torah. That's the heart of Deuteronomy. So this is an exposition of the chukim and the mishpatim, of the covenant renewal. Now you see how we bring the two together? This book is about renewing the covenant, and it's about the chukim and the mishpatim. So we bring them together because Moses is speaking a lot about, 22 chapters about how to worship God, how to love people, so that when you enter the land, you're going to have a covenant. Remember, they were supposed to go on Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim and pronounce the blessings and the curses of the covenant and renew that covenant. It's a renewal of the covenant that was done at Sinai. They were supposed to renew it after they enter the land. And these are the instructions so that they can do that once they cross over. Amen. Now we understand what Deuteronomy is all about. So it's an exposition of the Chukim and the Mishpatim of the covenant renewal to be followed upon conquering the land with exhortations. These are the end chapters, the latter chapters of the book. The exhortations, the blessing and the curses, as well as prophesied failure and promised restoration. That is the book of Deuteronomy. An exposition of the Chukim, the Mishpatim, for the covenant renewal with exhortations and blessings and curses, including prophecy that you are going to fail at this covenant, but I am going to restore you. So in a way, this covenant renewal, what's the word for renewal? Do you know? In Hebrew. Chadashah. Chadash. We get the Berit Chadashah, the new covenant. So you see, when the Lord gives the prophecy, you guys are going to fail me. I'm going to scatter you through all the nations. But in the end times, I'm going to bring you back into what? Into the new covenant. So this covenant renewal is a picture of the new covenant. This is very, very important. So with this in mind, then we're ready to get into the book of Deuteronomy. Yes. What I want to do with the rest of our time is go through the first portion, the portion for today, chapters 1 through 3 at the end of 3. We're going to go quickly. We're not going to be bogged down by the details, but we're going to go with the main thoughts. Okay? So follow me as we go on the screen in all your Bibles. So these are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel. Moses spoke to the children of Israel according to all that the Lord had commanded him to give to them. And Moses undertook to expound this Torah, saying, the Lord our God spoke to us at Horeb, saying, see how we're cutting into the chase here. The Lord spoke to us. What did he say? Go to the hill country of the Amorites. We're going to the main thought here. Go to the hill country. Go in and possess the land. That's what God is saying. That's what God told them. Remember, in Sinai, in Horeb. Horeb is another word for Sinai. Another name for it. Verse 9. I spoke to you, here's now in the speech. I spoke to you at that time saying, choose wise and discerning and experienced men from your tribes, and I will appoint them as your heads. Then I charged your judges at that time. What was the charge? I commanded you at that time all the things that you should do. Watch this. All the things that you should do. All the things. I don't know if you can see this down here. Maybe I'm in the middle here. The word things, davar. All the things, kol ha-devarim. Does that sound like the beginning? It is. I commanded you at that time, kol ha-devarim, all these words. You see the connection there? It's a beautiful connection. We keep going. Then we set out to the hill country of the Amorites, just as the Lord our God had commanded us. Go up, take possession, Do not fear or be dismayed. This is key. Hold on to this. Do not fear or be dismayed. We're going to go back to it, okay? Verse 22. Then all of you approached me and said, let us send men before us. These are the spies. We know what happened with the story of the spies. It says the people are bigger and taller than we. That's the key. This is the gist of what they said. The people are giants. We cannot go into the land. It says, we saw the sons of the Anakim there. Hold on to that. We're going to come back. Verse 30. The Lord your God who goes before you will himself fight on your behalf, just as he did for you in Egypt before your eyes. The Lord is a mighty warrior. He fought in Egypt to get out of Egypt. He's going to fight in Canaan to bring them into the land of Canaan. Verse 32. But for all this, you did not trust the Lord your God. The word trust, aman, we get the word faith. You did not believe the Lord. It says you did not trust the Lord your God to show you the way. To show you the way. That's key there. We'll come back to that too. Verse 35. Not one of these men, this evil generation, shall see the good land, except Caleb. Right? This is the gist of what God is saying here. Not even you shall enter there. Speaking to Moses. Joshua shall enter there. Encourage him, for he will cause Israel to inherit the land. Verse 41. Then you said to me, we will indeed go up and fight. We know how that ended. They were defeated. It says, instead you rebelled against the command of the Lord. You did not listen to him. Chapter 2. Then we turned and circled. So they were about to enter. They say, no, we're not going to enter. They tried on their own. They were defeated. Then the Lord said, okay, go back. Circle, live around Mount Seir for many days. How many days? 38 years. Many days. Then it says, you have circled this mountain long enough. Yeah, 38 years, long enough. Now turn north. Pass through the territory of your brothers, the sons of Esau. I will not give you any of their land, even as little as a footstep, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. Then the Lord said to me, do not harass Moab. So first Esau, now Moab. Do not harass them. I will not give you any of their land as a possession, because I have given Ar to the sons of Lot as a possession. That's why. Moab is descendant of Lot, and the Lord is still keeping his covenant faithfulness, even to Lot, even to his descendants. 400 years later. Amazing. Beautiful. Now watch this. We look at verse 10. We have a parenthesis here. This is key. This is very important. It says, the Emim lived there formerly. They used to live there in the land of Moab. Here, the land of Moab. So the Emim used to live there formerly. A people as great, numerous, and as tall as who? The Anakim, the giants. Like the Anakim, they are also regarded as Rephaim. But the Moabites called them Emim. Doesn't matter what you call them, they're giants. The Horites formerly lived in Seir, but the sons of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them from before them and settled in their place, just as Israel did to the land of their possession, which the Lord gave to them. Verse 19, chapter 2 still. When you come opposite the sons of Ammon, Ammon is the other son of Lot. So I will not give you any of their land. Look at verse 20, another parenthesis. It is also regarded as the land of the Rephaim, another set of giants here. So this is going to talk about the giants. They're also called Samsumim, a people great, numerous, and tall as the Anakim. But the Lord, now watch this, but the Lord destroyed them before them. The Lord destroyed the giants. And they dispossessed them and settled in their place, just as he did for the sons of Esau. So God helped Esau, helped Moab, and helped Ammon conquer their land. God gave them this land as possession to them. And he went ahead of them and destroyed the giants. This happened 40 years before. Israel was the one that failed to go into the land. Amazing. While the other pagans, because that's what it amounted to, they went in and the Lord conquered the land for them. Amazing. All right.
I have
Yes.
a question. Can we find somewhere in there that those other ones trusted the Lord? Who
No,
conquered the land for them?
we don't have those details.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have those details. Yeah. But great question, though. Okay, now, I have given Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon. We read this story in the book of Numbers. And his land to you in your hand. Begin to take possession and contend with him in battle. Now watch this. Then Sihon with all his people came out to meet us in battle at Jahaz. The Lord our God delivered him over to us. So we captured all his cities. Og, king of Bashan, with all his people came out to meet us in battle. But the Lord said, don't fear, I will deliver him into your hand. We captured all his cities at that time. Now watch this. Og, king of Bashan, he was the only one left of the remnant of the Rephaim. He was a giant. You see what's going on here? Why is Moses choosing? Deuteronomy is not a summary of the whole Torah. Only a few stories. Are they randomly chosen? Absolutely not. Let me put it this way. There's a theological thread, a theological reason why he is choosing these stories. To show Israel, the generations before, what the Lord began to do with them. As they enter the land, the first thing that the Lord began to do was, we're going to kill the sphere of the giants. You're going to find more giants in the land. But right at the beginning, even as you get close, you haven't even crossed the Jordan yet, and the Lord's already killing giants for you. Just as he did for the pagans. How much more would he do it for you? You see the reasons for choosing these stories? For introducing the whole book with this particular speech? It's creating faith in them. Generating faith. So this man was actually a giant. Watch this. His bedstead was 9 cubits. That is 13 and a half feet. How big is your bed? Maybe about 6 feet? Try a bed that's double the length of your bed. And fit a man that actually uses all of that space. Was that impressive or what? It's crazy.
I need to feed that guy.
That's right. So, see, we're already into chapter 3. Now it says, concerning all Bashan, it is called the land of the Rephaim. The Lord is delivering the land of the giants into the hands of Israel. Now we're coming to the conclusion, and our time is almost expired here. Verse 21, this is the end of the portion. It says, I commanded Joshua at that time, saying, your eyes have seen all of the Lord your God has done to these 2 kings. That's the purpose of it. You've seen what the Lord has done. So the Lord shall do to all the kingdoms into which you are about to cross. Do not fear them, for the Lord your God is the one fighting for you. And there is the first portion of the Devarim. Great purpose. Great truths there. But what about you and me then? Do we face giants? Now I'm starting to mess with you. It was all great. We're studying the Bible, right? Now we're bringing it to our lives. And here's my point. I have only one point for us to apply this. That the Lord says, not only did he say, I am going to defeat these giants, I'm going to go ahead of you. This is when he first wanted them to enter the land, 38 years before. The Lord says, I will show you the way. Amen. I will show you the way. How are we going to conquer those giants? I am going to show you the way. That's right. Trust me. I'm going to show you the way.